Hey dudes, how's it going? Welcome to episode 269 from Aspie with Attitude. If you're watching this for the first time, my name is David. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I have autism. I have some speech difficulty, a speech impairment, and I have speaker syndrome, and that's why I call myself an Aspie. And this is something I'm going to continue on doing, since it's something I started back on the 24th of July 2021, and I want to set it up properly just as I talk you through it. So in the meanwhile, if you have been seeing a lot of my videos, please, why not subscribe to Aspie with Attitude? That's all I ever ask for in terms of support. And also, you can ring this notification bell if you want to keep up to date with Aspie with Attitude. And please don't forget to like and share this video content around. That way, you're showing more support to this channel. And this is an autistic YouTube creator content channel where I actually explain autism and autistic life hacks. We always make a stand for autistic rights, the neurodiversity community, autism acceptance, and I line up red for autism acceptance. And just to get this video started, this is something I had been since 24th of July 2021. I had began slowly putting together a series of autistic YouTube contents, which I call this Autism Evolution Theory, which all started with episode 188, where I had hypothesized what it would have been like living on the autism spectrum in the days of early humanity, through the prehistoric times, and up to the Stone Age. And due to the success of this video upload, it was almost 11 months later, I did a part 2, once again, hypothesizing what would have had been like being autistic in the ancient civilization, which was uploaded on the 4th of June 2022. And speaking of ancient civilization, I'm talking about the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. Just all basic ones that most of you should be familiar with. And that was done in episode 237 and wasn't as successful as it was with episode 188, since basically autism didn't appear to exist in those ancient civilizations. I didn't worry much more about episode 237 since I wanted to move on forward with other autistic YouTube contents. And however it is, I did receive comments on Facebook, or either, if I can just look back onto the comments from that episode, how some viewers did hypothesize understanding autism back from medieval Europe and the Middle Ages, which is something I'll get into shortly. And one more thing I want to mention is, I'm going to leave a link to a whole playlist of Autism Evolution Theory in the description down below, since I'm planning to make more videos like this, and I hope that throughout 2023 I shouldn't have to recap once I get to the 4th part. And now, just to get on with it, I will explain how would autism had looked like throughout the Middle Ages and medieval Europe, and I'm talking about from 500 AD up till 1350. So I won't be mentioning any notable historical figures from that era. And just to get the solid start happening, let's talk about fantasy in George R. Martin's books, which is called Song of Fire and Ice, and even the HBO series like the Game of Thrones or House of the Dragons. It appears that any of the books, any of the HBO series, never had any characters who portrayed autism. On the other hand, Netflix and the History Channel did a series called Vikings back in the 2010s, and May had tried to portray an autistic character called Floki. Well, Floki was described in Vikings to be shy, and I believe more so, Floki had ADHD, which actually gives us a bit of understanding what ADHD would have been like back in the times of the Vikings and through the Viking community. So like, I don't want to waste time to spoil the series for those who haven't seen it. And for those who've seen all of that Vikings and understand Floki, there might be clues how autism did look like with the Vikings and the Germanic barbarian tribes. So now, what I've got here is, I will have a close-up shot of my Lego castle here. And the reason I've got this on display is because I'll be talking about the medieval times, as you've noticed in the special effects in the beginning how I used the medieval manuscript kind of artwork and used my favourite medieval music from a retro game from the 80s called Defender of the Crown. And we are in the age of kings, castles and knights. And we're talking about medieval Europe and the Middle Ages. Basically, it's the same things I had probably explained back in episode 237, how autism was still unknown, considering that there would have been kings, queens, knights, religious leaders and alchemists who were on the autism spectrum. Except, we will never know, since this is all lost in history. In the Middle Ages and medieval Europe, it appears that religion had took control of people's minds. I do not want to engage in talks about religion, since that some intellects of its times were probably tortured to death, like we're talking about most of them being burnt to the stake, and death penalties were likely to be imposed on anyone who didn't conform to the social norms of its times, and not to be painting the negative image on medieval Europe. This could have been terrible times to be on the autism spectrum, since sensory challenges and quirks would have been a crime back then. I had once heard of a monastery where monks had took a celibacy of silence, that they will never speak a single word in their lives. And this may be a clue that those monks that I'm describing could have been non-verbal autistic individuals. It is likely that autistic individuals back in medieval Europe most likely lived as hermits, and there were others who took on religious services like becoming monks and nuns, living out their lives in monasteries across Europe. Some others simply took on knighthood, becoming knights, and others would have become kings, queens and noblemen as well as you got the peasants and the guilds and whatever comes on the feudal system, and that's the way medieval Europe used to work. And it left us no written records or any given clues on how autism would have existed in the medieval times. Well, next time I make a video content like this, I'll try to explain autism in a Renaissance period up till the industrial age. I only just, for this video upload, focus on the years from 500 AD up until 1350 AD in the times of the bubonic plague and the Black Death. This video content is getting nowhere. At least this could be a solid start to figuring out how autism would have existed in the medieval times. Maybe if you like writing stories or telling stories and you're really into all that stuff, and next thing is if you're into fantasy fiction, and I'm talking about things like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, someone could come up with a lovable autistic character in the heroic world of swords and horses. And they'll actually make a good fantasy adventure, something that any autistic individuals could think of. That way, they'll give us a bit of a hypothesis what would have been like being autistic in medieval times. Well, I'd like to continue this series, so like I'll be working my way to understand autism in the 22nd century. That's how far I'll go, just dividing up into different eras, like what I've done in the last 3. And don't forget, I left a link to a playlist in the description down below, because as it happens, this is where I'm going to end this video content. And thanks for watching, thanks for listening to Aspie with Attitude, and I hope this inspires you to understand what it's like to be autistic in the Middle Ages. Peace and respect, and see you next time.